The city slowly came alive, bathed in the golden hush of early morning. Footsteps echoed across sidewalks, commuters lost in their daily rush. Among them, Alina Moore walked with quiet determination, her coat pulled tightly against the crisp autumn air. In her hand, she carried a small lunchbox, not for herself, but for her little brother, waiting at home. As she neared the corner, by the cafe where she worked, a sleek black sedan pulled up to the curb. A sharply dressed man stepped out, his movements urgent but graceful. In the shuffle, a black leather wallet slipped from his pocket and landed unnoticed on the pavement. Alina saw it. Without hesitation, she weaved through the crowd. "Sir, you dropped your wallet," she called out. The man turned, surprise flickering in his steel blue eyes. As she handed the wallet back, he asked, "You ran after me just for this?" "I didn't know who you were," she said simply. "It just felt like the right thing to do." He studied her for a moment, then nodded and took the wallet. "Thank you," he said, his voice lower now. Not just polite, but genuinely touched. Not everyone would have. Alina smiled softly. "It's nothing. Have a good day." And with that, she disappeared into the cafe. Liam Hayes, CEO of Hayes International, stood still for a moment longer, the image of her kind eyes lingering in his thoughts. Inside, Alina tied her apron and quietly returned to her routine. The moment already fading, she poured coffees, greeted familiar faces, and moved through her shift like any other day. But elsewhere, high above the city, Liam sat in his glass-walled office, distracted. He stared at emails that all blurred together. The girl from the cafe kept slipping back into his mind. It wasn't just that she was kind, it was the way she looked at him, like she didn't see a title or wealth. She had no idea who he was, and somehow that mattered. That evening, Alina returned to her modest apartment. Her younger brother, Daniel, greeted her with a tired but warm smile. "How was work?" he asked. "Busy," she said, setting the lunchbox beside him. "But I met someone interesting." "Yeah? Who?" "Just a guy. Dropped his wallet. I gave it back." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "That's it?" She laughed. "That's all. Nothing big." But even as she said it, her thoughts drifted back to those eyes, the way he looked at her, like she was someone worth remembering. Miles away, in a penthouse that overlooked the city skyline, Liam sat with an untouched glass of scotch. Her voice had followed him through the day. It lingered in his memory, soft, sincere, unassuming. He stood suddenly, grabbed his coat, and left. He returned to the cafe. It was closed, lights off. The street was quiet. He lingered outside, unsure why he was even there. Then something caught his eye, light spilling from a side window in the alley. Through it, he saw her, Alina, sitting with a young man, laughing softly. The sight struck him with an unexpected force. It was simple, warm, real. He stepped forward, then stopped. What was he doing? He hardly knew her, and yet he turned away, walking back into the night. In the days that followed, he kept returning. Sometimes he'd sit across the street, pretending to read. Sometimes he'd walk past the window just to catch a glimpse of her. She never noticed, and she couldn't stop thinking about him either. The man in the suit, the quiet thank you, the intensity in his gaze. That brief moment had planted something in both of them, something that was beginning to grow. On the third morning, Liam sat in the back seat of his car as it drove through quiet streets. It hadn't taken long to find her. He had resources after all. Now he knew her name, Alina Moore. He knew where she worked, and he knew he had to see her again. The cafe came into view, small, cozy, with hand-painted signs and iron chairs. Through the window, he saw her again, moving gracefully behind the counter, laughing with customers. She was grounded, real, nothing like the carefully polished people he worked with daily. He stepped inside. The bell above the door chimed. She looked up, startled, then smiled. "You again? I was in the area," he said, trying to sound casual. "Thought I'd thank you properly." "You already did," she replied. "But thanks for coming back." "I never got your name." "Alina." "I'm Liam," he said. He didn't mention his last name or his title. "Can I buy you a coffee?" he asked. "At the cafe where I work?" she teased. He laughed. "Fair point. Maybe I'll just sit quietly and let you serve me." She pointed to a table by the window. "I make a decent cup." Liam sat, quietly watching her. She moved with calm and kindness. When a rude customer snapped at her, she handled it with patience. He took note of the man's name on the receipt and texted his assistant, blacklisted. No one disrespected Alina Moore. When the crowd thinned, she brought him a coffee and sat across from him. "So?" she asked, "Are you always this mysterious?" "Only when I don't want to be judged before I'm understood." She nodded. "You're different." "How so?" "You observe. You don't perform." He smiled. You're not like the people I usually meet either. Good or bad? Good. The silence that followed was gentle. Outside, rain had begun to fall. By closing time, Alina looked exhausted. Her steps slow. She had worked a double shift. As she stepped outside to lock up, her legs gave out. Alina! Liam rushed forward, catching her just before she hit the ground. She collapsed into his arms, soaked and barely conscious. He didn't hesitate, scooped her up, and rushed her into his car. In the back seat, he held her as she leaned into him. Her voice was barely a whisper. My brother, don't let my mom worry. Her words hit him like a weight. There was history in her voice. Struggle. He held her closer. As the car sped through the city, they stopped at a rundown apartment. Liam carried her up the stairs. A teenage boy opened the door. Panicked. She fainted, Liam said. But she's okay. They laid her on the couch. She stirred just enough to whisper, thank you, then slipped back into sleep. Liam stood there for a moment, taking in the peeling paint, the bills piled on the table, the quiet weight of a life harder than it should be. Then he stepped back into the rain. He had come to thank a stranger, but now he knew he couldn't walk away. Not now. Not ever. The hospital lights buzzed faintly above, casting a harsh, sterile glow as Elena paced the narrow corridor outside the emergency room. Her hands trembled, fingers clenched tightly around her phone. That morning, Daniel had collapsed, burning with fever, his breathing shallow and strained. The paramedics called it complications from his chronic condition. Elena had rushed him to the hospital with little more than a half-empty wallet and a silent prayer. Now, she stood frozen in front of the billing counter, the nurse's words still echoing in her ears. We need a deposit to continue treatment. She had nothing left to sell, no relatives to call, no friends who could lend the kind of money they needed. Her pride, already battered, dangled by a thread. And so, with a throat tight with emotion and hands shaking, she did the one thing she never thought she would. She scrolled through her contacts and called Liam. The phone rang once. Twice. She almost hung up. Elena, his voice came through, calm and alert. Her breath caught. I'm sorry for calling. I know I shouldn't. I didn't know who else. Daniel's sick. They won't, her voice cracked. They won't treat him without money. I'm on my way, Liam said. No questions, no hesitation. Less than 30 minutes later, he walked through the hospital doors, his coat still damp from the rain. Without a word, he approached the front desk, spoke quietly to the staff, and handed over his card. A few quick calls later, Daniel was moved to a private room, and one of the city's top pediatric specialists was on his way. Elena could hardly process what was happening. It felt surreal. She found him by the vending machine, battling a stubborn dollar bill. You didn't have to do all that, she said softly, her voice laced with disbelief. He looked at her, unreadable. Yes, I did. I don't know how to thank you. You don't have to, he said. Then after a pause, added gently, but there's something I can offer, something that might change more than just this one moment. Her brows pulled together. What do you mean? There's a program, he explained, part of a foundation I run, a business incubator for people with ideas and drive but no access. It's competitive, yes, but I can get you in. No strings. Just show up. Be willing to learn. Elena stared at him, stunned. Why would you do that for me? His expression softened. Because I see something in you. Because you've been fighting for others your entire life. And maybe it's time someone fought for you. She didn't answer immediately. Her eyes brimmed with tears, but she blinked them away, nodding slowly. Okay, she whispered. I'll try. Hours passed. Daniel's fever finally broke. His breathing evened out, and his face softened in peaceful sleep. Elena stayed by his side, her fingers brushing his hand as she whispered reassurances. Later that night, she stepped out to stretch her legs, wandering into the hallway. And there, slumped in a chair, was Liam, still in the same clothes, his phone slack in one hand, his head tilted as he dozed. He had stayed. A lock of hair had fallen across his forehead. His coat was draped over the armrest. In sleep, the powerful CEO looked like any other man, tired, quiet, real. Elena hesitated, then slowly, she removed her cardigan and draped it over him. He stirred slightly, but didn't wake. For a moment, she just looked at him, really looked. The gratitude she had felt earlier shifted into something deeper, something warmer and more intimate. Her heart swelled, not with fear, but with recognition. This wasn't just thanks anymore. She was beginning to care. Silently, she turned and walked back to Daniel's room, her heart heavier, but no longer alone. The classroom buzzed with ambition, sharply dressed students, expensive laptops clicking, air thick with confidence and competition. Everyone looked like they belonged. Everyone, except Elena. She sat at the back of the room, her blazer a little too big, her notebook filled with handwritten notes, while others tapped effortlessly on sleek keyboards. The first few days of the business incubator were overwhelming. The language, the group dynamics, the subtle digs disguised as curiosity. It was a different world. "You're the one the CEO recommended, right?" one student had asked, their smile tight, their tone polite, but tinged with condescension. Elena simply nodded and kept her head down. She wasn't there to impress, only to learn, to grow. But doubt clung to her like a second skin. Could she really survive in this world of privilege and polish? What she didn't know was that Liam was always watching, not from the shadows, but from the conference room glass, from his office above, from security feeds he rarely used. But this mattered. She mattered. He read every progress report. He saw how she stayed late, how she asked the questions no one else dared to. He saw her offer help to the very student who had mocked her days before. And one Friday afternoon, after a particularly grueling week, he called her into his office. "I've been watching your progress," he said, leaning forward. His tone was calm but sincere. "You've shown real commitment. I want you on a new task force. A small team working on a real-world social impact project. No theory, all hands-on." Elena blinked, surprised. "Why me?" Liam smiled faintly. "Because the world needs more people like you in the rooms where decisions are made." She hesitated and then nodded. "Okay." 2 weeks later, she stood beside him on a dusty hillside in a rural farming village. Their team was working to design sustainable food storage systems for low-income communities. Elena was nervous, but she was there, sleeves rolled up, listening intently to the local farmers, asking questions, taking notes. She was present, engaged. That night, the team pitched tents by a quiet stream. The others had gone to bed early, but the stars were still awake, and something in the air had changed. Elena couldn't sleep. She sat outside near the fire, her eyes fixed on the flames dancing in the darkness. A moment later, Liam appeared, wrapped in a thick wool blanket. "It's quieter out here than I thought," he murmured, settling beside her. She smiled faintly. "Peaceful," she replied. They sat in silence. The only sounds were the soft crackle of the fire and the stream trickling nearby. Liam picked up a twig and tossed it into the flames. I grew up in foster care, 5 different homes before I turned 16. I used to hate silence. It meant someone was about to leave." Elena turned toward him, surprised. "I thought you came from money," she said softly. "I built it," he said simply, "from the ground up. But those echoes, they never fully go away." She looked down at her hands. "I used to dream about being a writer, but then Mom passed. Daniel got sick, and life just became about surviving." Liam was quiet for a moment, then asked gently, "Do you still write?" "Not for years." "Maybe you should," he said, voice low. "The world could use your voice." The fire popped quietly between them. The wind played with the leaves, and above, the stars shone brighter than any city light. Then, without saying a word, Liam reached over and took her hand. His touch was warm, rough, grounding. Elena looked at him, her heart pounding. "I've been in rooms with presidents, stood on stages with world leaders," Liam said, eyes locked on hers. "But I've never felt peace, not like I do when I'm next to you." She couldn't speak. In that quiet space beneath the stars, something shifted, something soft and undeniable. She didn't pull away. She just held his hand tighter. By dawn, a photo surfaced online, grainy, but clear enough to spark a storm. Elena resting her head on Liam's shoulder, their hands intertwined beside a glowing fire. It was supposed to be private, just a fleeting moment, but now it was everywhere. Splashed across gossip sites and business blogs alike. CEO Liam Hayes involved with former cafe worker turned intern. Love or favoritism? Board raises questions about Hayes' relationship, from serving coffee to holding power. Who is Elena Moore? By noon, her phone was buzzing nonstop. Messages flooded in. Friends, classmates, strangers. Some were kind. Most weren't. Anonymous trolls mocked her looks, her background, her motives. She walked into the old cafe she used to work at, just trying to hold on to something familiar. But even that was gone. Her manager pulled her aside, eyes apologetic, but words firm. "I'm sorry, Elena. The attention, the noise. It's too much. Customers are uncomfortable. We have to let you go." She stood still, heart sinking. Her one safe place, gone. And outside, the press was already waiting. "Miss Moore, are you sleeping with your boss? Did you plan this from the beginning? Are you the reason he's pulling resources for personal projects?" She didn't answer. She just kept walking, head down, tears burning in her eyes. The street swam. The world spun. The noise became a roar in her ears. Meanwhile, at Hayes International, The boardroom buzzed with tension. Liam sat at the head of the table, face calm, but his clenched jaw gave him away. The board spoke in polished threats. This relationship is a liability. The media frenzy is hurting investor trust. The stock dropped 4% this morning. You're a public figure, Liam. Your personal life reflects on the company. An older board member leaned forward. End it, or we'll have to discuss your future here. Liam didn't blink, but inside, something cracked. That evening, Elena sat alone on a park bench beneath a weeping willow, eyes swollen from crying. She hadn't answered Liam's calls all day. She needed space, needed silence. Then she heard footsteps approaching. He came toward her slowly, coat still open, eyes searching hers. Elena, she stood up, hands shaking. They took everything from me today, Liam. My job, my name, my privacy. And now they want you to give me up too, he said quietly. Her voice quivered. And what do you want? He didn't answer right away. You told me once you felt peace with me, she continued, voice cracking. But this doesn't feel like peace anymore, does it? No, maybe they're right. Maybe I don't belong in your world. Maybe I never did. He stepped closer, but she held out a hand. If loving you means I have to shrink, to disappear, then I will. If it makes your life easier, I'll go. Tears streamed down her face. Liam stared at her, something raw flickering in his eyes. Then in 2 quick steps, he was in front of her, gently cupping her face. No, he whispered. No, Elena, you don't disappear. Not ever. She shook her head, crying harder. He pulled her close, voice rough with emotion. I'm not losing you. I don't care about the board, or the company, or my reputation. I'll burn it all down if that's what it takes to keep you. She stared up at him, stunned. You do that? I'd do anything for you. And in that quiet park, beneath golden leaves and a darkening sky, Elena collapsed into his arms. It was weak, but because someone had finally, completely chosen her, loudly, fiercely, entirely, and that changed everything. The news came quietly. No press release, no statement to the media, just an internal memo quietly passed around the company. Effective immediately. Mr. Liam Hayes will step down as CEO of Hayes International and transition into a senior strategic advisory role. The board thanks him for his years of leadership and vision. Years of visionary leadership gone in a single, quiet decision. The business world was stunned. Investors scrambled for context. Analysts whispered theories about scandal, power shifts, and pressure behind closed doors. But Liam, he offered no explanations, just walked away. Not defeated, not ashamed, but in love. While media outlets obsessed over where they'd vanished to, Liam and Elena were busy turning an abandoned library on the city's west side into something new. The Compass Initiative, a dream rooted in Elena's heart, built with Liam's backing, and shaped by both of their visions, a place where ambition met compassion. It wasn't about profit or prestige. It was about people. Young people, ones who'd grown up overlooked, unheard, and under-resourced. Every morning, Elena brewed coffee in the community kitchen, the smell of cardamom and hope drifting down the halls. Liam ran strategy sessions, whiteboards scribbled with wild ideas and real possibility. They ate lunch with students, laughed over rice bowls, and spent long nights on saggy couches, listening to teens speak their truths with shaky voices and big dreams. They lived upstairs, in a cozy loft, with creaky stairs and too much sunlight. Plants crowded every window, and books took over every surface. On weekends, they held hands at the farmer's market, picking peaches and flowers, smiling at strangers. Their life wasn't simple because nothing happened. It was simple because every day they chose each other quietly, intentionally, with no need for noise. By May, the first cohort of Compass was ready to graduate. 27 students. Each had a story. Some had lived on the streets. Some had done time. Some were parents just trying to give their kids more than they'd had. And now they were launching food trucks, apps, co-ops, nonprofits. The ceremony was held in the courtyard. Strings of light dancing above folding chairs and painted banners that fluttered with words like resilience, rise, and begin again. Elena stood at the podium. Her voice was steady, but her eyes shone. You've taught us as much as we ever taught you, she said, scanning their faces, her heart full. This isn't the end. It's the beginning of something that matters. Cheers, laughter, hugs. Then Liam stepped forward, but he didn't go to the mic. He turned toward Elena, who had just stepped off the side, already blinking back tears. Elena, he said, his voice soft, but clear enough for every ear. She looked up, confused, still clutching the folded speech in her hand. "You once chased me down a crowded street to return a wallet," he began. "You didn't know me. You didn't ask for anything. You just did what was right." He took a step closer. "What you didn't know was I had been spending years losing things. People, pieces of myself, and worst of all, the belief that real goodness still existed. That morning, you gave me back more than my wallet." The crowd hushed. Phones came out. A few gasps rippled through the students. Liam reached into his jacket and pulled out a small velvet box. "Gave me back something I didn't even know I'd lost. Hope. And every day since, you've given me joy, strength, and a reason to live a life that means something." Then right there, on a stage meant for dreams, not fairy tales, he dropped to one knee. "Elena Moore," he said, his voice thick, eyes never leaving hers. "I've built companies, empires, but you are the most valuable thing I've ever found. Will you marry me?" Elena stood frozen. Then, slowly, she stepped forward, tears slipping down her cheeks. Her fingers trembled as she took the box from his hand and opened it to reveal a gold band shaped like a compass. Simple, beautiful, meaningful. She knelt with him. "You idiot," she whispered, laughing through the sobs. "You didn't even ask which finger to put it on." He laughed, sliding the ring onto her shaking hand. The crowd exploded. Students chanted her name. Teachers cried. Staff cheered. And in that noisy, imperfect, radiant moment, Elena wrapped her arms around Liam and kissed him, sealing a promise that had been unfolding quietly ever since the day she chose to return what someone else had lost. Not just a wallet, a heart. And this time, he was never letting it go. The book came out in the fall. The cover was quiet, just like her. Two hands holding a worn leather wallet. The background lit with the colors of sunrise. The title read, "The Right Thing: How One Small Act Changed Everything" by Elena Moore. At first, it spread slowly. Then readers started to share it, crying over pages that mirrored pieces of their own lives. Book clubs passed it around. Teachers added it to their reading lists. Social media flooded with quotes scribbled in margins and highlighted in hearts. She didn't write about the fame, or even much about Liam. She wrote about poverty, about caregiving, about losing and trying and holding on to kindness even when the world tried to take it from you. She wrote about choosing the right thing when no one was looking. Within months, the book hit bestseller lists. Interview offers poured in. Film producers wanted to adapt it, but Elena only said yes to the invitations that allowed her to speak directly to the people who needed it most. And when she stood on those stages, telling her story to a room full of strangers, it wasn't just magnetic. It was healing. It wasn't her performance that captured hearts. It was her presence. The way she spoke, with warmth and honesty, touched people deeply. Her voice didn't preach. It invited. Her favorite role was hosting a weekly educational series called Rooted Futures, where she interviewed everyday heroes, single mothers starting nonprofits, teens creating community gardens, and formerly incarcerated men teaching job skills. She asked them the same questions she once asked herself. What saved you? What do you still dream of? Behind the scenes, Liam watched it all unfold. He never sat in the front row, never joined the panels, never appeared in the press, but he was always there. He protected her time, ensured her contracts were fair, and prioritized her health. He brought her soup when she lost her voice, tucked her in when she wrote through the night, and kissed her forehead whenever she doubted herself. He was her quiet engine, content to hum in the background while she lit up the sky. One evening, Elena was invited to give a keynote speech at a global youth summit in Geneva. The stage was grand, the hall brimming with world leaders, philanthropists, and thousands of young changemakers. Her name lit up the screen to the sound of roaring applause. She stepped onto the stage in a simple white dress, her hair pulled back, a compass pendant resting just above her heart. Taking a breath, she smiled. "I get asked this a lot," she began, her voice calm and steady. "Did I always want this life? Did I dream of stages, of writing books, of any of this?" She paused. "The truth is, I didn't." She scanned the audience, her gaze landing on faces young and old. "I dreamed of paying rent, of keeping the lights on, of seeing my little brother make it through another winter without getting sicker. I just wanted to survive the week." Silence. Then one day, on my way to work, I saw a man drop his wallet. I picked it up. I could have kept walking, but I didn't. A few heads nodded in quiet agreement. Later, that man asked me why I gave it back. I told him, because I believe in doing the right thing. She smiled softly, her eyes shining. What I didn't know was, that moment gave me more than I returned. It gave me hope. It gave me love. It brought me back to the version of myself I thought I had lost. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. I'm here not because I climbed to the top, but because I chose every day to keep my heart soft, to believe that even in a broken world, we still get to be whole. She stepped back from the mic. The room erupted into a standing ovation. Backstage, Liam waited quietly. When she came off stage, he gently took her hand. "You were incredible," he whispered. She leaned on his shoulder, her breath steady. "You know what still amazes me?" "What?" "That it all started with something so small." He smiled. "Sometimes the smallest seeds grow into the biggest trees." In that moment, with thunderous applause echoing behind her, Anna rested in a truth she never doubted. Doing the right thing had given her more than she ever gave away. It had brought her him. Their house was simple, nestled where the forest met the sea. The white shutters were weathered by salty wind, and wildflowers curled along the fence. It wasn't grand, but it was home. Elena stood barefoot in the garden, the soil cool beneath her feet as she clipped lavender. The morning sun spilled through the trees in golden light. Birds sang. Waves whispered in the distance. And from inside, the sound of a baby laughing danced through the air. She looked up and saw Liam walking toward her. Their daughter nestled in his arms. Her tiny fist clutched his shirt, dark curls mirroring Elena's. "Mama!" The baby giggled, reaching out. Elena laughed and scooped her up. "There's my sunshine." Liam wrapped his arms around them, kissing Elena's head. "She refused to nap until she saw you. She's already picked up your stubborn streak," Elena teased. "Or your fire." He grinned. They stayed there for a moment, swaying beneath the sky, breathing in rosemary and sea air. Inside, their home was alive, walls lined with books, kids' artwork taped to the fridge, and an old typewriter sitting beside Elena's notebooks. Above it sat an engraved compass and a photo from the first Compass Initiative graduation. They moved slowly now. Mornings in the garden, afternoons helping at the community center they'd built, evenings by the fire with tea. Their baby giggling on the rug. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. One rainy afternoon, Elena found an old wooden box tucked in the attic behind baby clothes. She opened it and froze. Inside was the weathered leather wallet, the one Liam had dropped that day on the sidewalk. She carried it downstairs and placed it on the table. Liam looked up from rocking their daughter. "Where did you find that?" "In the attic." She smiled. "I didn't know you kept it. I meant to throw it out so many times," he said, picking it up. "But something always stopped me." She ran her fingers along its edge. "It's wild, isn't it? All of this because of something so small." Liam looked at her with the same quiet reverence he'd had years ago. "Elena," he whispered, "you thought you were returning my wallet, but you handed me back my heart." She laughed through misty eyes. "That sounds dangerously like something I'd write in a book." "Then maybe you should," he said, kissing her gently. That evening, they walked the shoreline as the sun melted into the sea, their daughter sleeping in her sling between them. The world shimmered, gold, endless, silent. They didn't need words. Sometimes love isn't about grand gestures or poetic lines. Sometimes love is simply two people walking together, hands entwined, hearts aligned, building a life out of one small moment of kindness. As the stars began to glow overhead, Elena looked up at Liam. "You know," she whispered, "I used to wonder what home felt like." He squeezed her hand. "Now you know." She nodded, resting her head on his shoulder, and with the sea behind them and the future ahead, they walked on, into peace, into light, into forever. From a busy city sidewalk to a quiet home by the sea, Elena and Liam's journey reminds us that even the tiniest act of kindness can ripple into a lifetime of love, healing, and purpose. She never asked for anything in return, but what she found was everything she ever needed, because sometimes the heart you help is the one you end up keeping. If this story touched your soul, reminded you to believe in good people, or made you feel something deep within, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Welcome to Soul-Stirring Stories, where every tale reminds you it's never too late for hope, for healing, and for love.